Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Horseman, and I'm the Data Evangelist with Dataversity. We would like to thank you for joining today's Dataversity webinar, Leading Data Voices from the Front Lines of Governance, sponsored by Foundational. It is the latest installment in our brand new webinar series, DGIQ Dialogues. Just a couple of points to get us started. Due to the large number of people that attend these sessions, you will be muted during the webinar. For questions, we'll be collecting them by the Q&A section, but I'll also be watching chat for this one. If you would like to chat with us or chat with each other, we certainly encourage you to do so. And just to note, the Zoom chat defaults to send to just the panelists, but you may absolutely switch that to network with everyone. To open the Q&A or the chat panel, you'll find the icons for those features in the bottom middle of your screen. To answer the most commonly asked question, as always, we will send a follow-up email to all registrants within a couple of business days containing links to the slides. And yes, we're recording, and we'll send a link to the recording of this session, as well as any additional information requested throughout the webinar. Now, let me introduce to you our speakers for today, Alon, Cindy, and Rania. Alon is a seasoned data security leader who has been tinkering with code and data for more than 25 years. Alon is the CEO of Foundational Data, who is building innovative governance tools and proprietary code-based lineage for large-scale enterprises. Previously at Singular, a mobile and web attribution provider, Alon designed and built high-scale ETLs, real-time data pipelines, transformation layers, and data algorithms, working with the world's most sophisticated marketing teams. Alon is passionate about interdisciplinary technologies and combining cybersecurity knowledge with the data world. Cindy is the Director of Healthcare Analytics and Integration at Right Triangle Consulting, where she advises healthcare and life sciences organizations on revenue cycle management and data strategy and policy, analytics and integrations, and system optimization to improve operational performance, security, and governance. She brings more than 20 years of experience in healthcare IT across both domestic and international markets, with a strong focus on translating data governance principles into practical business-driven outcomes. Rania is the founder of Innova Center of Excellence, COE, a consulting and training firm that helps organizations drive sustainable business and digital transformation through high-impact center of excellence. With over 15 years of cross-industry experience, she brings a multidisciplinary background in engineering, education, leadership to her work in innovation strategy and enterprise transformation. So, with that amazing introduction to our amazing panelists, what we're going to do today, first of all, I'm going to put my screen over here, is we're going to posit a number of questions and have a panel discussion about where we think data governance is and some challenges that folks might be having with governance. So we've got some prepared questions to talk to everybody about, and I encourage everybody in chat to be as vocal as possible. I know you guys always love to chat up in our webinars, so I strongly encourage that this time as well. And we'll have some time for discussion with you guys too, so feel free to post some questions in chat. But to kick us off, let's start off with question one. Data governance is key for success in using AI to transform an organization's business. Many organizations are starting data governance initiatives to meet this need. What are some common data governance concepts that surprise you that organizations still struggle with? And we'll start this question off with you, Alon. Feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me here. I'm probably the least person to answer this than Rania and Cindy, but I'll give it a try. Obviously, we're a bit biased as we're a vendor in the space, but in the conversations that we get ourselves into, it's still quite surprising, and maybe you would be surprised that. People are starting to work on data governance and are learning that documentation is the first topic. They understand the concept, but you see a lot of organizations were very close to zero or a very big percentage of the things that manipulate your data or how the data is coming from or whatever transformation is it going through are really not documented except for that one person that is 20 years in the company and so on. So the concept is there, but this is always surprising to us. And the second thing that is a bit more advanced, and again, obviously some bias given our space, but the concept of the dependencies, aka lineage. A lot of way bigger organizations than you'd expect still have this in Excel, or kind of like the modern, version of pen and paper. So the concept is there, but again, to hear that a Fortune 500 company is managing dependencies on the data or documentation or where it's coming from in Excel, that's always somewhat of a surprise to me.
Wonderful. And I think a wonderful segue over to Cindy too, because I think Cindy and I have had this conversation before. Cindy, do you want to take it away? What are your thoughts?
Uh, Absolutely. I mean, from that side of a surprise is hearing how many people think that they have to create this because of AI, and really it's a maturity model. Like AI just operates well if you already have a mature data governance in place. So the fact that you are basically finding out that your maturity model is weak, and they're surprised about that. And I was like, "Ooh, I don't know why you're surprised because you weren't prepared before you even put it in." Like it's that size of what's coming to light is them just realizing that where they are truly in their maturity model, even before you put AI in the mix, is a surprise to them. And so getting to that point, kind of where you're talking about documentation, it's really that clarity, and understanding the true roles that need to be assigned and even definitions that are in place. And so back to that idea again of maturity, that they believe that, they are in the golden era, full mature model, when in fact we're in most cases still back in the front and having to put those building blocks in place just so that they can be ready to consume appropriately.
Awesome. Rania?
Thank you, Alan and Cindy, for your input. And to add to what you shared, one thing that always surprised me, and I'm always surprised about this, that a lot of organizations, they don't have a clear understanding actually of the data they have. And they often struggle to define even their data domains and the critical data elements that we need to focus our governance efforts. And I usually share with my clients this: we need to focus, when we are starting a data governance program, we need to focus on the business first and then move to the data. And by that, I mean, you really have to spend some time understanding the critical business processes in the organization. What I mean by this, the processes that drive revenue, that support customers, that mitigate risks in the organization. And from that, you can see what data is actually used to execute on these processes and help in decision making, and what are the main pain points. And when you reach this point, this will help you to actually make sure your program is successful. But I'm always surprised when I get into these conversations with the organizations and they don't know, what data they have, and it's very hard to define the data domains. And if we put some effort into this upfront, this will help us to define the data domains from a business perspective, which will actually improve the adoption of the program.
I love that. What I really love about that answer too is we kind of get into this, hey, we're here to provide value.
Exactly.
What is that value? And as data folks, when I was a young data person, I was guilty of this, and I was like, well, you should care about data. Like I had this belief that everybody should care about every piece of data as if it's the most important thing in the universe. But the business wants to just do its business in the end. And we need to be able to show return on investment. We get asked all the time, like, how do we show ROI on our business, and for our business, for our data governance program? Well, if we're connected to the business and actually driving towards things that they care about, then it kind of falls together quite naturally.
Exactly.
In my second question, which is a bit of a segue to this, so we'll jump right into this next one here. And so instead of some common challenges that folks are having, what are some new or different concepts or challenges that organizations are looking for data governance to solve? And we'll do the same order this time. Alon, you want to take this one away?
Yes, sure. So again, a bit biased given the conversations that we're having, but I think that there's a lot of hot topics, but the one that is meeting me the most is what we call these days context graphs, or the context graph. That feels like a topic that has been always there, but especially emerging in the last, I would say, 2 months, in a sense. There is some attribution to that to what's going on in social and what people are talking to, but also to the maturity of the models, especially since like 4.6 and codex and all of that. And naturally, or maybe correlated to that, the implementations. So OpenAI had a big piece 2 or 3 weeks ago around their context graph, and that got a lot of people kind of like excited. And it goes back to the data governance folks. Context graph goes back to the basics of things that we already discussed even now: documentation, dependencies, ownership, tags, labels. If we're going to the technical side of what it actually means, uh, there's a lot of concepts now that are kind of like used synonymously with context graphs, like knowledge graph, data flow graph, lineage graph, all of these graphs. But ultimately, it goes to these core things that data governance traditionally has owned and was responsible for. So I think that gets to the data governance, which is now maybe data and AI governance in a lot of places. And I don't know if it's officially in some places or unofficially, but we're expected to solve this.
Yeah, I love that answer so much because you get into so many nitty-gritty details as to the kinds of things that data governance has to help with. A friend of mine is actually working on setting up LLMs to do analytics, and he's like, "We've got to tag everything. Like, there's so much metadata that we need in place so that the LLMs can actually learn from our data because without some natural language in there." How is it supposed to have context as to what stuff means? Is Are you seeing something like that too, Alan?
Yes, that basically fits to the same place. And I think that also what you have right now, which is again, at least from my perspective, something of the past month or two, people are now sharing success stories. And when you
Hmm.
see that, oh, this actually works, then in for this use case or for that use case, then you're trying to mimic or even to copy the concepts and bring them to your organization.
It gives those of us hope instead of just seeing pretending what sunshine, unicorn, and rainbows might look like. On the
Mhm.
other end, we can actually see it working at an
Absolutely.
organization. Yeah. Cindy?
Um, I think from my side, especially when you're starting to talk about it from an AI governance perspective and putting in, it's really actually using it from a procurement standpoint moving forward and having that really documented well for how are the different models interacting with one another. And so knowing whether someone may be doing something under the hood that you didn't quite understand with your data. And so are we fully governing kind of that side of it? But then also thinking that, you've got to go out and buy a new model when in fact the current model you already have is actually doing that too. And so are you really looking at that full implication then? And so it's something from that side that I'm not for sure that we've really ever thought of from a data government. So it was more of in the past, like our data sharing back to the tagging and everything else that we talked about, right? Like, are we writing our data sharing agreements appropriately based upon how we have it documented? But this is not only data sharing, back to do we want to include it in a large language model now, but it's also now we've bought something. We want to be using it. How is it being used by them? And then if we get a new model and we're trying to implement that and release it as well, is it playing nice with what we already own? And so thinking about procurement in a different way.
I'm going to put you on the spot for a hot second, and I
Okay.
didn't even prep you. So this is a truly organic moment here. So my apologies. But I read, I think it was just yesterday or just this morning, that the FAA or the FDA is treating AI agents as medical devices. Um,
Mhm.
Being that you're a healthcare expert, like I kind of absorbed what that meant, but I don't think I took to heart what that truly meant. What does that mean uh, for things that we need to govern or be aware of?
So if it's being truly termed as a medical device in that way, then it means there is enough knowledge that they can make a decision off of it and put forward that recommendation as a decision in your treatment plan to be taken. So that is a definition and the understanding kind of around, like if you think of someone saying that this is a medical device, it means that at some point a decision within a treatment plan has been made in a recommendation for a person. So from that side, it's a part of the reason why I say I am more of a revenue cycle person within healthcare than saying clinical or informatics for any reason, is because I like to stay away from that medical device recognition as much as possible. Like I have no problem on putting forward information to people, but I truly like to ensure that it is a human making that recommendation and not something because of data that I've put forward. And I try to stay away from that line quite a bit.
Neat. Well, thank you for the detailed explanation. Rania, off to you for this question.
Thank you, Mark. So from what I'm seeing right now in the organizations, I see two approaches being emerging right now. So some organizations are actually focusing on strengthening their data governance programs. So they are focusing on metadata management, data quality, all of this in preparation for trusted AI, and which is a great approach. They are trying to make sure whatever data is used as an input data for the AI applications is actually trusted, which is great. Other organizations are, for whatever reason, either regulatory compliance or pressure from the executives, they run right away and try to create AI governance frameworks without actually building the data governance foundation first. And this is actually where the challenges happen, because we all know, right? Garbage in, garbage out. If the data is not governed properly and we don't understand the data, we don't have ownership defined and data quality metrics around the data, how can we trust whatever output the AI application will give us? So organizations that are getting it right are building the AI governance on top of the data governance. So what I mean by the AI governance in this context, they are building the models oversight. They are building the ethical and security guardrails around the use of AI in their organization on top of the data governance practices that is foundational for the work first. So I'm really encouraging organizations to understand this, to make sure that they are working in parallel. There are coordinated efforts with the data governance and AI governance together.
Yeah, I love that too. And I'm actually working with one organization right now on an AI governance model. And kind of, yeah, it's hand in hand with data governance. If you dialed the clock back 3 years ago, I think I was on my soapbox saying it's the same thing as data governance, only different. You should wrap it all together. Oh, little did I know, because as soon as you start unpeeling that onion, the
Yeah.
roles and responsibilities are very different. The types of documentation artifacts are different, and the risks are different. And so it really does require its own program and oversight to some degree. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot of that Venn diagram has a lot of overlap to it as well, but not completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
There
and
was.
sorry to add to this as well, is something really important as well for the AI governance framework is to include where the human will be in the loop. As we say, human in the loop, where exactly are they going to validate all the output? So what Cindy was sharing right now about the FDA models and, just making sure that was a human in the loop in all these decisions
Mhm.
about your treatment, it is scary if you know that all of this, nobody reviewed all of this, is scary for all of us. So I'm hoping people understand the risks of that.
And I
Well,
would
and
add, oh, sorry, Mark. I would add something
no, go right ahead.
small to that. In a sense, the regulated industries were always there in terms of compliance requirements, and whether it's the banks with BCBS, and now we've heard that HIPAA is also requiring you. I don't know, Cindy, if this is correct or not, but we heard that HIPAA will now require you to really understand and document the source of every data set. At least that's what some folks are telling us, which was always there, but now it's very clearly a requirement. And that goes to so if the regulated industries they're kind of required to do that, then even if you're not regulated, that probably drives you to the same place, right? If you're expecting some governance around those outcomes.
And that was exactly the point I was going to raise too, Alon. But we also deal with this pervading public sentiment that here's your AI slop. And for those of us who have worked with the LLMs a lot, you can kind of tell immediately when something's generated by AI, and then you get this feeling. It's kind of like when we were like walking down the street in 2012 and people were wearing Google Glass for the first time, and you were like, "Oh, there's that person wearing those stupid glasses." Sometimes you just get that creepy feeling. It's like really, it's AI. I think all of us are beholden to have some sort of transparency around. Hey, yeah, we're using AI, but this is how we're using it. And to both your points, this is where the human's in the loop. This is how we're meeting regulatory requirements. All of that's good stuff. Cindy?
I was going to say, if I have a personal soapbox more than necessarily from what I've seen on Ask for what I want data governance to solve from that, because of the different things that are coming out, it's really more, and you and I have talked about, but it's really more when is the right time to deprecate or really looking at it then of this is old data and we shouldn't still be including that from a decision standpoint. And so knowing even more of where you're talking about the agents that are going to go out there and make recommendations on that treatment plan, are are they making recommendations on things that have been updated within the last 5 years, or are they still looking at medical practices from 20 years ago? And so what comes to mind for me in particular is around colon cancer. Like colon cancer is now one of the leading cancers for death, and it's just because of detection. And so even within my lifespan, I've seen it go from age 50 to 45. And then the last time I've talked to some doctors, they're like, no, that's going to really be up to 40 within the next 2 years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
is that agent really being updated enough to know that the age has changed so rapidly, if you will, even within the last 10 years of moving from recommended 50 to down to 40, and knowing that, um, like I said, recommendation of you should actually probably go get a colon screening because just of your age, much less any other factors. So it's things like that that I'm concerned on. Have we put in the right um, data and then removed that data too because it's should be deprecated?
Amazing. The timeliness and currency of data, and those quality issues being of paramount importance to make that work. It's a good thing we have tools like Foundational that help us with that.
Thank you.
Any parting thoughts before I move to the next question? Like this is the question. Like, when we were talking about this over the weeks, we were most excited about this one, and I am most excited about this question. So close to my heart. A lot of folks are leaning on the importance of change management being critical to data governance success. If some of you follow my book of the month feature, I think I have 3 books in the last quarter that have all been strong on change management. Can you elaborate on why you think change management is critical and how you've leaned on change management concepts to have greater success with data governance? And Rania, we'll start with you on this one.
Thank you, Mark. So in my opinion, when you think about data governance, it's all about changing behavior, right? You are asking people to look at data as an asset to the organization. You are asking them to define the data domains. They are asking them to do a lot of work around the data, define ownership, define data quality metrics, escalations. All of this will change the way they do their work, right? So it is when you think about it from this lens, change management is so essential for the success of your data governance. It requires a lot of people skills. So in my framework in my work, I always put people at the heart of any data governance program because it's very important to understand and relate to their day-to-day work. It's very important to explain to them what is data governance in an easy to follow, non-technical language at all. Try to make sure it explains how this program will will make their job easier, how it will reduce the reworks of their work, how can they make sure the data quality improves. So a lot of things that will make them understand the value of the program. So, and one of the important things that I incorporated in the last couple of years is the data and AI fluency training. It's a very non-technical in a non-technical way that is tailored for different audience, for business professionals, for executives. And the goal is not to turn all of them into data scientists, but we want them to understand their role. They want to understand how first, what data flows in the business processes and the systems, what is the risk of poor quality data. We want to make sure they understand this so they can have the common language to collaborate with the technical teams and other teams who are involved in any digital transformation initiative or data analytics. So creating this common language is very important because once people understand the personal and operational value of data governance, you will see that they will be more engaged and will actually support your work. So change management, you know me, I'm very big on change management, and I had actually the honor to work with Robert Signer on some of this work that actually complement his model, the non-invasive, with change management and data fluency.
Awesome. Yeah. Also, his latest book, I
The
get the title
catalyst,
wrong.
right?
It's the Data Catalyst Cubed.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It's on my bookshelf. That's why I'm leaning back here. Yeah, very excellent book. I can't recommend that enough. It ties in all of those concepts together and yeah, he describes it as an exponential add-on for that. Cindy, what are your thoughts?
Um, I think that it's critical just because of the nature of how many different use cases you still have present for when everyone thinks they're talking about the same thing, right? And so the fact that we had a dashboard, everybody agreed on what the dashboard meant, we put it out, and then the next week someone's come back and they've changed one of the aspects of it without realizing that they've changed the whole concept and that it's impacting other teams and other areas within the organization. And so, if you don't have that change management or good concept in place, you're not, one, being able to put a bit more accountability on that individual who did that, but also understanding the need of what they're trying to even get out of it that's different than everybody else. And so, making sure that goes back to clarity and documentation that we can provide from that side. But I think that it also turns into that, again, just conversation with the user, as Renee put it, as having them the center of it all to begin with. And so if they understand to begin with, then it makes change management organic too. And it makes it something that they recognize that they can do more easily instead of going in and making a change to that dashboard quickly because they knew no one was going to listen to them. So they just needed to get the data the way they wanted it. And so stopping that kind of hidden practice that we feel like we see all the time, but making it something that's visible and accessible for all.
I love that. I call that ninja dashboards. They're kind of hiding in the shadows, waiting
Yeah.
to strike,
Yeah,
waiting to
exactly.
exfiltrate data. Nobody can tell that data's been exfiltrated. Everybody's like, oh no. Alon?
Thank you, Mark. So I guess this is a two-part establishing why it's critical. Seems kind of obvious, but I'll still say that if in the past maybe 5 to 10 years, there was a lot of kind of like excitement around the modern data stack and obviously things moving to cloud. And then everyone was talking about data democratization, and you had more working hands and also a lot more consumers than change management to see this example with the dashboard that was clear, right? Because basically you have data consumers, they use the dashboard. You want to make sure that now if something is changed, they know it's communicated. Uh, now, now as we enter, or maybe we already entered this AI era, it's not about data democratization anymore, but the data is consumed by the AI now. So clearly, when things change, even going back to the other thing that Cindy said with deprecating all data sets or all documents or whatever that is, it's kind of like meeting us in the same place. So change management is at least to me seems very obvious, but to our discussion here today, still a lot of folks you're surprised why change management is not really in its place or in its maturity that you'd expect. Now, in terms of concepts, and this is my personal bias, but same as we started this company to bring source code analysis from cyber into data governance and lineage and so on, uh, we should really, or at least that was always my belief, that in terms of change management, our, let's call it our twin organization or sister organization, which is engineering, they have change management pretty much figured out. Like engineering organizations, they work at scale. You have multiple business domains, organizations. They push code all at the same time, thousands of code changes that hopefully don't cause the system to crash. And that happens all the time, right? So, and those concepts have been established in 20, 30 years now around like a SDLC, software development lifecycle, CI/CD. As many of these concepts as we can bring into data and data governance, to me, that's my personal bias. Those things are solved, at least solved in a much greater maturity than we have today. So even to the dashboard example, in the maybe perfect universe, that dashboard is version controlled, and there's some process of review when someone changes it. Now, granted, that doesn't always happen, especially in dashboards. Uh, but sometimes, like when you change a data source or when you change a calculation or a metric, that thing gets peer reviewed, for example, which is an SDLC concept, right? So the more of these that you have, generally that has always been my North Star in basically improving change management. That's kind of our philosophy.
Love that. And chat's getting kind of engaged in this, and there's a segue to this question that I really want to ask that I can see here. So I'm going to hit the answer live button. Because I feel like this relates so much. What are our thoughts on like a federated data management model or data governance model? Something that we would use to manage data mesh or data products. What role does governance play in managing data products? Alon, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, that's a big topic. Uh, I think that answering, do you need a data mesh or do you not, and do you go on that route? That is a bigger than my payroll, maybe, if that's the expression. Like that seems like a big topic. But I would say that regardless if you're going into that architecture journey, uh, data governance definitely has a key role in what do you allow, what do you centralize and what do you federate. And if you federate, what kind of guardrails do you put in place as data governance to make sure that people don't mess it up, right? So I don't know if that's exactly answering the question of should you or should you not do it. But to me, in any circumstance, you need to develop like a risk model of what do you allow. For example, a lot of organizations talk about the analysts now writing code. And in the universe of AI generated code, that is becoming like a thing, right? You have more and more traditionally less technical or non-engineer people that are now encouraged to push code into production.
Hmm.
And that's a big deal. So as data governance, or again, data and AI governance, you have to have the guardrails to have there. You have to have the reviews, because before you could say, oh, I'm going to trust, those are the data engineers, I trust what they do, they review each other, and so on and so on. But now analysts, business users, people in finance, they all can generate something that changes it doesn't necessarily changes the whole thing, but it can change some KPI in something in the accounting model, and then they come back to you to around the governance principles. So to me, it's all getting federated, regardless if we're doing a data mesh or not. So it's all getting federated. We're already there, and you should have the right mechanisms that are relevant for your organization's maturity to 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 uh, to uh, to act in that model. That again might be organization specific.
I love that. Whenever we talk about should we federate things or not, my brain immediately goes to Star Trek because I'm a massive nerd. So I like bringing in the United Federation of Planets when we think about federating things. So what are the prime directives? What are the central core beliefs of our organization? And then what is the cultural nuance that we allow to subscribe into that federated model? So in Star Trek, you've got the Klingon Empire doing Klingon Empire things, but it still adheres to the prime directives of the Federation. So that's just how I like to compartmentalize it and think about it. Well, what does that mean for how we manage data products, how we do the work in our environments? And I love your story about analysts because a friend of mine is dealing with exactly that. Their analysts are using AI to move data to do ETL from one system to another and move data from one system to another. What are the engineers doing now? Like, there's some really disruptive questions that we ask ourselves when we start looking at how we set these things up, and it impacts people's day to day.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Cindy,
actually, Mark, to add to what you're saying, it all depends on the organizational culture. This is something very important for us to understand. And if we are going to apply the federated model, which I really recommend in a lot of organizations, but there has to be a lot of coordinated efforts between. There should be a central body, the data governance office or whatever you call them. I usually call them, the team of excellence. There are different names for this central team that actually helps and coordinate all this effort. So we don't end up inside each team working on silo and we don't know what's going on, right?
And I would add to that, actually, also I was reading one good comment here on like working in smaller pieces, because usually things are big, uh, that a lot of the things that data governance and our partner in data engineering can drive is architectural decisions.
Mhm.
So if you're deciding on some, and it doesn't have to be quick, but let's say that you're deciding on some key architectural decisions. For example, let's centralize all the data that goes to AI in this Snowflake warehouse. Okay, so you're deciding on that principle, and then people are at least centralizing to do certain things in an area or in a domain that you can govern ideally better, because you have some more mechanisms maybe. And some organizations maybe a few years ago decided, okay, let's switch to DBT because that's version control, and that would allow us to bring some of the better governance mechanisms. So through those architectural decisions that again can be organization specific, you can actually drive now better. If our topic is change management, you can derive better change management because you're kind of forcing different parts of the organization to adopt something. And then that environment, if it's new or if it's something that is a bit more organized, you can put the mechanisms there to be more baked in. I guess hopefully that was clear.
Mhm.
I think where I went with it from that side of things and thoughts, and I may be taking the question the wrong way, but um, from your point of view, when you had brought forward on the software design life cycle compared to the data life cycle on that I do see them overlapping, partly because I started in software design before I became a data person. So I have a hard time separating at times anyway. But when I started thinking about the federated model, and then are we having these individuals kind of move from analyst role into the uh, actual engineer role, and what does that mean, and vice versa. In my mind, I was like, oh goodness, this really is now talking to our data quality. And so for if I put on my software hat and right there on data quality in other ways, I always had to go back and be like, where's your negative test plans? And they're like, what are you talking about? They're like, this is what we said the use case was. I'm testing a use case. I was like, but if we know what the use case is supposed to do, we do just as much as what we don't want it to do, right? I was like, so why don't we have any negative test plans saying it didn't happen this way? And everyone just kind of looked at me and I was like, okay, cool. I'll go write the negative test plans. And yes, we're still going to run them before you get to pass this and put it into prod. Like that's what we're going to do now. And so, um, when it comes now to thinking about the different models of federated versus central and how do we want stuff to interact, that's what comes to mind more of is did we think about how we don't want it to interact? Are we on that opposite. And so maybe it's still me going even more back to the we need to deprecate the data. And that ultimately that's where my mind goes to. But that is that opposite side, I feel like isn't necessarily always given the right amount of thought of we absolutely always do know what we want it to do. But if we can define how much we want it to do, we should be defining what we're expecting it not to do as well. And I think that we don't always do that as a good job within our data governance model. That we take a lot of thought around the happy path and we forget that negative path at times.
That's an
And
excellent
so
point.
I think when we go to which model should we be using and implementing, that is just as much as a consideration as to whether you want federated or centralized. So again,
Or hybrid, right? Get the best of
right,
both
or
worlds.
hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can move on to our next question here. If you were coaching someone who is starting a brand new data governance program, what would you tell them to pay special attention to today? And we'll start Cindy off with this one. Cindy, you can kick us off.
Um, talk to the person that is complaining the most. That if they are always coming forward, then there is a true pain point that someone isn't understanding. And probably if you can solve that pain point for them, then they're also going to be your first adopter and your number one person that is going to turn into not only an owner for you, but then they're going to become an advocate and go out to other individuals and hopefully if it works the way that I've seen it in that past, so this is my bias and my background right from that, is that then they will speak your praise to everybody else and it will be an easier adoption rate outside of it. So instead of necessarily taking, oh, they always complain, that's just who they are, be curious about why they're complaining and instead meet them and see what that pain point is and solve it.
Somebody in chat had just said while you were talking, the quiet ones that talk behind your back will hurt you the most. Ask me how I know, she says. That sounds like a personal story behind that one. Rania?
Yeah, so building off actually on what Cindy said, because I do this a lot in my data governance training, I always advise on focusing on two things. First, understanding the business in your organization by understanding, as we talked about, the critical processes, understanding where data creates value, what are the current challenges and opportunities with the data. And when you tie the data governance initiatives to a business opportunity or business pain point, it actually clicks. And exactly at what Cindy said, people will actually feel the value of what you are doing. So data governance will stop being like the theoretical abstract concept that people hardly understand what's going on. It will actually deliver tangible results. So this is very important. This is the first point. The second point is building trust by building rapport, right? So I always say a data governance program lead needs to be a people person. You need to talk a lot to people. You not talk a lot, actually listen first. You have to be a very good listener to listen to them more than you talk. Then when you talk, you will actually talk based on what they shared with you. Then you can explain the value of the program from their perspective. So you can bridge the gap, right? You can speak their same language. So this is very important. As I said, I always put people in the center of the work. And I think by focusing on these 2 points, by focusing on understanding the business and creating trust and building rapport with the stakeholders, I think this will set you up for success in your journey in the data governance.
On?
Yes. I would say something that sounds similar, but then I will deviate a bit. So very similar to Rania, uh, you're looking for early wins, maybe quick wins ideally, but early wins, right? You gotta have impact. And a few years ago, before AI, there was even this phase where people started to talk about like what is the value of data and how does data gets close to the business. I think that all went out the window now with AI, but still you want a win to contribute to the business, and also that people can attribute the success of the data governance program and to expand it to clear impact, right? So that's kind of like the obvious thing, or the important, the obvious most important thing to me. Now, to make that specific, as a rule of thumb, at least in my universe, which again was also said in different shape and form in this webinar today, two pieces are: one, discovery. So create the kind of like the interface to understand what we have. What is the data lineage in my universe? But what data do we have? Where is it coming from? Who is using it? All of this goes into that topic of discovery and lineage. Once you understand what's going on, people suddenly can operate. They can find things. They can discover new data sets. They can see what can be deprecated. They can see what is most popular and understand what to do with it. So discovery is like, to me, that's an easy win that can, not necessarily an easy, but an obvious win that can come from data governance. And the other one goes to also Anya's comment, to trust. So data quality. Once you understand what is actually being used, if you have data quality problems, go there and solve them. Reestablish the trust in the data, and then people would adopt more data sets, drive use cases. Now again, maybe I'm risking myself being too obvious with AI, where data quality is obviously key, but you'd be surprised, and there's always improvements to be made. Better monitoring, understanding what's going on, establishing data contracts to trust the inputs so you get the expected outputs, all kinds of these topics that can be bigger, but it all starts with that trust, which in our space really ties to having the basic data quality kind of like a mechanism. So that's a win that usually would help you get started if you can already improve the trust, that and discovery.
Awesome. Oh, and I love lineage so much. So I love that you raise it. And the amount of wins that an organization gets from lineage can be outstanding. One organization I was with, we were able to show like a 5 FTE savings for implementing lineage on its own.
Everyone likes seeing everything on a graph, and then you suddenly see what you have. So that's always like a good experience to actually see what you have and search. Everyone wants to be able to search and get like, oh, we have this, we have that, right? So it's always a positive kind of like experience that
Yeah.
that business users have.
Well, click, click, click. Where did this come from? Click, click, click. How was it calculated?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd like to build upon that in your statement that you had made earlier about HIPAA and otherwise from healthcare. I mean, the concept is there. We just call it something different. We're talking about provenance when you're talking about healthcare, but it really is just the data lineage from that side, especially when you're going into interoperability. And so again, back to us where we talk about our ETL and our sources is just moving it from one to the other, and yet it's a concept we haven't solved. It's one that we understand as data people fairly easily, but it still continually is an issue within healthcare and how do you go about it. And so whenever anyone starts to talk about fire services, so the fast healthcare interoperability resources, um, when you're going through that, all that they're really talking about is provenance, and provenance equates to the lineage then, and really wanting to know the who, the what, and the why. But at that level, it's really getting then down to why did this clinician ask for it? When did they ask for it? And how are they using it? And again, we can answer that pretty easily. Like we have the tools and the knowledge as soon as we put governance in place. And so whenever it comes up from that side and everyone talks through of how we're going to solve it, and I just sit there and I just smile and I was like, I know how we could solve it. We could get through this pretty easily if we allowed for us to work through it more. But um, the other side of where a lot of people, I feel like, have the angst against the governance program, though, is that they see that from policy or restriction. And so instead of actually enabling the way that we look at it, right, from a data governance perspective, Instead, I think everyone just looks at it as restrictions that are placed upon what could really happen from an interoperability standpoint. So that's where, if anyone asks me, I was like, yeah, let's just get good lineage in place, and we would be moving a lot faster.
I can definitely relate to that.
All right. Well, those were the four big questions I had prepared. I do see a little bit in chat here. Uh, let's somebody just put in a question. Like the first sentence grabbed me right away because this is something I've been thinking about quite a bit. So we're going to dive in. Traditionally, data governance is focusing on structured data. With AI models needing a huge amount of training data, unstructured data seems to be getting more interest. Are you seeing this development, and how would you tackle a data governance program focusing on unstructured data? Who wants to take this one?
I will give my perspective of it. Because a large portion of AI that's being used within hospital settings, right, is ambient listening. So allowing for doctors to be more present within your visits, right? So you can have your clinician, you can have your physician assistant, nurse, whoever is in the room actually be with you versus, listening, but sort of kind of off on the screen anymore because they were trying to do all of their note taking. And so it became a good, not a good, it became a good use case, but it became a problem where patients were no longer feeling the center of that visit. That they felt like that those individuals were tied to the computer then versus really listening to them. And so that's where, from an adoption rate, that it's becoming widely adopted because those individuals feel like that they get to be back to being patient centered, right? So now, what does it mean though that we've got this ambient listening in the room and they've captured everything into the doc note now versus those key critical deals of what they would have just initially typed in, right? To the point, the example that I use that I do it because I know that my doctor would laugh that I know that it took place that he had to do it. But a nurse very discreetly once came in, knocked on the door, right? He went around the room, he gave his coffee order, and then popped right back. And I saw that my coffee order had made it into my chart. Right. And so I just quickly, I was like, hey, I think you may want to check a little bit more on your ambient listening. Your coffee order got put into my chart. I, I'm fine with it. I don't really care, but I know that that's not what you were expecting situation, right? So knowing that we're really only looking for those actual diagnosis codes or problems that were listed from the patient and being able to pull that out appropriately from that whole conversation and that that's what actually gets stored in our chart, that's that is that problem of what we're trying to work through, right? And how do we get that structured better of knowing, nope, that coffee order should never have really been captured. We don't really care about it. It has nothing to do. But it was something that was said in the room. So making that.
That's an interesting example, Cindy. And this takes us back to the human in the loop. So I would assume that the doctors should, review all of these notes and take all of this noise out. So all of these tools save them a lot of time, instead of typing all of this and give them the opportunity to focus with their patients. But from my perspective as a patient, I'm expecting the doctor to spend a few minutes to review this before they hit save and it actually appears in the patient's chart.
Yeah, and I think that that's a difference on setting and transparency too, right? I can definitely say I'm a high level patient, right? So I was already looking at my chart before I even left the office, compared to maybe someone else who didn't even know that that was actually recorded and available, and he wasn't expecting someone to look at it till the next day, right? So that difference of user comes into play too.
I would go to as I should maybe go to the technical side of it. So in addition to the mechanism of we mentioned maybe SDLC, so the person should review your chart and remove the coffee comment. You can also or that system developer or whatnot can also create some mechanism that even runs AI against the AI and sees something that is kind of obviously not belonging there and remove it. And from this, I don't know if I can extrapolate, but if we go back to the original kind of like a question around unstructured data. So yes, unstructured data is obviously a big thing in AI. Uh, but really what is changing a bit is maybe the technologies, but it still translates to data pipelines. It's just that those data pipelines are maybe not in SQL, they're in Python, and maybe they don't run in Oracle, they run in Databricks. But it's to an extent, and maybe I'm again generalizing, but there's still data pipelines. So we're not going to call them kind of like we're going to call them differently, and maybe we're not going to call it data lineage right now. We're going to call it AI lineage, but it's still conceptually similar. It does fall under our purview as kind of like as governance folks, and the mechanisms would be different. But it's still in all of these places. Going to Rania's comment, there are human processes that you should modify, and there are technical processes and tools that should be able to address the new languages and the new technologies and whatnot. So it should be ideally as transparent as it can, and we shouldn't be necessarily dealing with oh, is it structured or non-structured? It's just like, okay, there's this nuance here, there's that nuance there. It's always going to be the case when you enter kind of like bringing in new technologies, which is happened to be the case right now.
Yeah, what a wonderful conversation. The only thing that I would have to add to that particular concept is just a reminder out there in user land that um, uh, all records are documents, but or so yeah, all records are documents, but not all documents are records. The amount of um, uh, rigor and management we do for some unstructured content is going to be higher depending on the importance of a document. Does it need to be controlled? Does it need to be audited? That sort of thing. So you get some weird governance peculiarities with particular types of documents, like an invoice, for example, or something that has some structured elements to it. That's a true record of business taking place. There's some interesting things that kind of happen there. With that said, we have 3 minutes left. Any parting thoughts before I hit the end webinar button from our panel?
From my point of view, I think it's a great time to be in data governance. I think that if a few years ago there were maybe some thoughts, as I mentioned before, like, oh, why is data important? And all of those, I think those are way behind us. And I think now the data organization is, which is now the data and AI organization, is kind of like one of the hardest place to be. So I think that this is an exciting time to be that place, and everyone is waiting for you. If you were a bottleneck before, you're definitely a bottleneck right now, and that's a good thing, I think.
uh, from that side, I completely agree that I am a big Disney adult fan. So on that side of being a nerd like Mark in my own way, that I refer to us being the belle of the ball right now, then, and that we get to have our time to shine and dance. Um, that's how I've always looked at us for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
If the shoe fits. Rania?
Exactly.
Yeah, and to add to what Ellen and Cindy said, I think we have a mission to educate organizations about the importance of data governance, especially now before they move quickly with all the AI applications. I think we have the mission of educating everyone about the importance and working with them to make sure this happens in an organic way without creating interruptions by actually enabling all of these initiatives, but in the right way.
Awesome. Well, with that, I think that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you so much to our amazing panel for this wonderful conversation. I know I had a lot of fun. I hope you had a lot of fun, and everybody out in chat, I hope you had a lot of fun. So thank you for coming. If you're watching this on a recording later, then you should have been here live. You could have poked us on chat. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, and thank you, panel, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.